Hello everybody and welcome to Tutorials by Decade. My name is Decade, and in today's video we're going to dive into Unity a little bit more. If you did not watch the first video, it's no big deal if you didn't. It was more of an introduction of who I am, and if you're brand spanking new to Unity, that's a good video for you to watch. Otherwise, if you're familiar with this, then you don't need to worry about watching that video. However, I did do a couple things in that video. I did set my layout the way I wanted to set it up. If you don't know how to do that, you go up to here, up in the upper right hand corner, you click on that, and then you either choose your layout, or you can edit these windows by clicking and dragging and moving things around. And once you get it to where you like it, you can actually save a layout. Also, for those of you that did not watch the last video, I am using Unity 6 for this. As you can see up here, Unity 6. So some things might be different if you are using an older version of Unity, or if a new version's come out since I've released this video, then things might be different on a newer version. But nonetheless, I'm gonna do my best to try to explain the older versions at least. Obviously, I can't predict the future and what's going to change with newer versions, but yeah. With that being said, I did in that other video add some folders down here. So if you're not aware of how to do that, you just right click, you go to create, you go to folder, and then you name the folder whatever you want to name it. I added art, I added prefabs, and I added scripts with another folder in there called player. So if you want to do what I have done, now's the time to pause this video and go right ahead and add those in there for you. Once you do that, we are going to add some assets. So if you watched the last video, again, I posted a link to some assets. We are going to use those assets throughout the entire tutorial series. I do have some other assets that I'm going to add later. It's mainly like audio and things like that. So for right now, it's just the art. But before I actually do that, I just want to show you where I got this art from. So I originally got the art from here, opengameart.org. If you go to browse 2D, that's one of the first things on here, Zelda-Like tiles. And then you download it right here. Now, I have since made changes to this artist's art. I've added a couple things. I've changed a couple things. I've added a ton of stuff. I changed the character around. As a matter of fact, I made 4 versions of that character, which you'll see here shortly. But the original artwork, I want to give credit to this person right here. I'm not even going to try to pronounce ARMM 1998. Just so you know, you can go to opengameart.org, and there's other sites out there that offer either free or pay for art. You can also find artists that are willing to do things for you, obviously for some compensation, money, obviously. Sometimes they want credit in the game as well, so bear that in mind. Also, another thing to keep in mind whenever you're downloading any type of art or music or anything like that, you do have to worry about copyright and licenses. So this person here that uploaded the original art, it's public domain. So public domain means that you can use this art for whatever you want. You can change it. You can do essentially whatever you want to do to it. They're not asking for any credit. They're not asking, for money. They're not asking for anything. It's free for you to do what you will with it. With that being said, though, not everything is public domain. There's different licenses and different laws and stuff, and not just here in America, but also worldwide. So bear that in mind when looking for and acquiring different art. Sometimes it's just as simple as they want credit you know, whenever you use it and they're in the credits at the end of your game or whatever, just, you know, mention their name. Sometimes it's as small as that. Other times they may want compensation after the fact. So they allow you to use this stuff for free, but then, you know, once you start selling your game, you know, any money you make, they want X amount of money out of that. So I'm not going to get much further into that, but just bear that in mind that there are different types of licenses and copyright laws and all that other stuff that you do have to be aware of if you're using someone else's art. Now, if you are an artist and you do your own art, well, then at that point, it's yours. You do what you want with it. But yeah, with that being said, if you go to the link down below in the description, you will find the assets that I am using. Again, I did edit a lot of those assets and change a lot of them from the original. So if you download the original, you can still follow along for the most part, but some things might be different. So it might be better just to download the changes I've made. But what we're going to do, you're going to open up, I have a second screen, so I'm doing this on another screen, but you want to open up your file folder and all of those files that you downloaded, those assets, you're just going to highlight all the folders. One says character, one says objects, one says UI, and one says world. You're going to drag those into your art folder. Now, depending on your computer and all of that, this could take a little bit of time. Actually, that didn't take very long at all. So just to double check. Yes, all of them are in here. So we are good there. Now, you are going to have to go in and you are going to have to make some changes to all of those assets within Unity. But we're going to do that as we go. I'm not going to spend this entire video going through each and every one of those. What I am going to do is go to, well, let's start from scratch here. You go to art, go to characters, go to players. Now you're going to see a bunch of different things in here, but the ones that you want to focus on are the ones that say player character 1, player character 2, player character 3, and player character 4. These are the 4 variations of the characters that I've made from the original one. The original character is not on this list because I've also added some animations and some other things. So nonetheless, what you're going to do is you're going to find the character that you want to use for this. Again, there's 4 different options on here. So I like to use this one because it's the closest one to the actual Legend of Zelda game. You know, the character has a green shirt and all that other stuff. So this is the one that I'm going to use. So again, we're going to have to do this for most of these assets, but for now, I just want you to focus on one of these. So click on one of these 4 characters that you're going to use. You're going to come over here. You're going to go to sprite mode. Now, some things have changed with Unity 6. Unity 6 realizes that there's multiple sprites on there. So it should have automatically changed sprite mode to multiple. If you're on an older version of Unity, this will likely say single. You are going to have to click on here, go to multiple, and change it to that. Pixels per unit, we want that to be at 16. If you do not change that to 16, whenever you bring your assets out onto the screen, they're going to be very, very tiny. But to give it that Super Nintendo feel, we want to change that to 16. The next thing you want to do is go to filter mode. You want to change that from bilinear to point no filter. The last thing is coming to compression. Go to here and click on none. Once you do those things, you're going to hit apply. The reason why the compression and the filter you want to change, if you don't do that, things look really like fuzzy. Sprite mode, you want to change to multiple because again, there's more than one sprite on a sprite sheet. And then I've already explained the pixels per unit. Once you've done all of that, the next thing you're going to do is you're going to open up the sprite editor. Now again, with Unity 6, this is something new where it tries to auto splice all of your sprites on a sprite sheet. And as you can see, it kind of did okay, but then like these 4 here, they kind of combined into one sprite. So what we're going to do to fix that is we're going to go up to slice. We're going to click that. We're going to go type instead of automatic. We're going to go grid by cell size. X we want at 16 and Y we want at 32. Once you do that, you'll hit slice. You can click anywhere outside of that box for it to go away, and then you're going to hit apply. Now, for this sprite sheet, apply is almost instantaneous, but on larger sprite sheets, it could take a while. So just keep that in mind. Once you've done that, we're done with this. You can close out the sprite editor. And now we can actually bring something onto the scene. So what we're going to do is we're going to click on this little arrow right here. And we're just going to grab the very first one. You're going to click, you're going to drag, and you're going to drop anywhere on your scene. And you'll notice over here, now there's an object that was added to the sample scene. We're actually going to go to sample scene. We're going to right click on that. We are going to... I guess we're not going to rename it. They must have changed that with Unity 6. So never mind on that. Instead, we're going to go to the player character 4_0. Yours might say something different if you chose a different character than mine. But you're going to click on that. You're going to go up to here. You are just going to rename that to player. Once you name that to player, you're going to hit enter. And you'll notice over here that that changed to player. Your hierarchy can get very, very confusing very, very quickly. With that being said, you want to make sure that you're naming things so that you understand what goes where and what is what. There's also ways that you can organize this a little bit better, which we will do as we go along. Right now, the player object is just that, a player object. It doesn't really need to be separated or anything like that. So just keep that in mind. Naming is very important. So now that our character is on the screen, your position, you can do what you want with it. I am just going to move it to 0, 0, and 0. Since we're in 2D, X is your left and right. Y is your up and down. Z would be front and back. But again, we're not doing anything with Z since this is 2D. So we don't need to really worry about that. The other thing that you're going to want to do is we're going to add components to this. This is so that we can manipulate this object later and move it. So the very first thing we're going to do is add component. And I've already did this earlier, but you're going to see something like this if you've never done this before. There's a whole bunch of different things on here. Some of them are useful for 2D, some of them are useful for 3D, some of them are useful for both. But right now, what you're going to do is you're going to click on the search and you're going to start typing in rigid body 2D, all one word. You're not going to need to type it all in though. So RIG, and there you go. It's already there. So we're just going to go to rigid body 2D. We're going to click on that, which will add the rigid body to this object. Now, we need to change the gravity scale to 0. If we do not, then it's going to just, whenever we start the game to test it, the character will just fall. We obviously don't want that to happen. If we were doing a platformer, then yes, that would be awesome, but this is not a platformer, so we don't want any gravity. All this other stuff that's on here, actually, if you go to constraints, you want to freeze the Z. That'll come into play later. But otherwise, all these other settings right now, we do not need to mess with. The next thing we want to do is come back to our assets, go to your scripts, go to player. You're going to right click and you're going to go up to create. Now on older versions of Unity, you would see here, somewhere over here, you would see create C# script. If you're using an older version of Unity, you're going to want to click on that. For those of you that are using Unity 6, we're going to go to scripting and we're going to go to mono behavior script. We're going to click on that. We are going to name the script player. Once we do that, Unity is going to kind of do something here in a minute. There it is. It's going to reload some things and do its little thing there. But once that's done, what we're going to do now is double click on player. And if Microsoft Visual Studio is not already open, it will open for you. Mine is opening up on my other screen for whatever reason, so I'm going to drag that over to this screen. And there we go. So your Visual Studio might look a little different than mine. I have mine loading up in dark mode. I also got rid of some of the stuff that's on the sides here, just so that way you all can see this a little bit better, because this is where we're going to be doing all of our scripting. If you've never done any scripting before, any coding, any programming, some of this stuff might be confusing to you. I'm going to do what I can to try to explain it to you, but unfortunately this is not like a super beginner's tutorial course, whatever you want to call it. So some of this stuff might go over your head, in which case I do recommend, doing some learnings on Unity itself. There's other YouTube videos out there that'll teach you the very, very basics of programming and scripting. There's a ton of resources out there to get you familiar with doing all this stuff. Again, I will do what I can, but that's not the purpose of these tutorials. So again, you might want to go somewhere else to at least get the basics down before you come back. With that being said, we need to declare some variables up top here. So I like to give myself one blank line above and one blank line below, so that way things are, again, organized. We are going to do private int player speed. Then we are going to do private rigid body 2D, my rigid body, and then we're gonna do private vector3 movement change. So what we're doing here is we're declaring three variables. The first one is an integer. Again, if you're new to scripting, an integer is whole numbers, essentially 1, 2, 3, 4, so on and so forth. There's also a thing called float, which is almost the same thing, but those have decimals. So like 1.1, 1.2, so on and so forth. Then there's doubles, and again, it gets pretty crazy. So if you don't understand what any of that means, you're gonna want to get some help on learning how to code, learning how to program, script, whatever you want to call it, somewhere else. You can ask me questions. You can ask our Discord community questions. But again, you're going to have a hard time following these tutorials if you don't understand what those things are. Rigid body 2D is just, we're going to be making a call to that rigid body 2D that we put on the player character. And vector 3. So for those of you that have been programming for a while, you might ask, well, why did I not do a vector 2? There's going to be some things that we're going to be doing with this character that for whatever reason, at least on older versions of Unity, vector 2 just did not seem to work right. So we're going to do a vector 3 instead. And for those of you that are new to scripting in general, vector 2s and vector 3s are your movement on the plane. So like the X, Y, and Z, that's your vectors. So these are the three that we're going to do. On start, we are going to make a reference to that my rigid body. So we're going to do my rigid body equals get component. Now, if you're using an updated version of Visual Studio 2022 and you're using Unity 6, a lot of this stuff is going to autofill for you. Sometimes it's going to be right, sometimes it's going to be wrong. If you like to type everything out, go ahead and type everything out. If not, you're going to see up here where it says tab to accept. If you're happy with what all that says, you're going to hit tab. That's what I was going to type anyway, so I'm just going to hit tab and tab again, and there we go. But this is what you want it to say, my rigid body equals get component, my rigid body 2D. That is all we need to do for start right now. Now, in update, we're going to leave that blank for right now, and instead we're going to create our first function. I am going to call this private void handle movement and animation. So we are going to do all of our movement and animation within this function, or at least walking and eventually running animation in this function. Right now, we're not going to focus on animation. We're just going to focus on being able to move the player object. So the first thing we're going to do is movement change equals vector3.0. So again, this automatically filled in for me. So we're going to hit tab to fill that out. Sorry if this sounds a little different. I realized I made a mistake in my original recording, and instead of re-recording it, I decided to do a voiceover. I said some stuff that was completely wrong here, and I'll chalk that up to tired rambling. But the whole reason why we do the vector 3.0 is so that way the character does not continuously move. So when you let go of WASD or whatever direction you're using on the direction pad, your character stops and doesn't just keep on going. So again, sorry for the weird audio, but I just wanted to clarify that and fix my mistake. The next thing we're going to do is actually get the input from the player itself, or themselves, I should say. So as you can see, it's trying to figure out what I'm doing here, but it's not quite right because I always want to do X first. And we're going to do input. Oh, why did my equal not go in? There we go. Equals input dot get access raw horizontal. And then we're going to do the same thing. Movement change dot y equals input dot get access raw vertical. So within Unity, you can set different buttons to do different things and have multiple buttons do different things. So instead of programming a joystick and then programming the WASD, and if you want programming the up, down, left, right arrows, you can just name it horizontal and vertical. Oh, I spelled vertical wrong. You can just name it horizontal and vertical, and then within Unity, you can go in and change what horizontal and vertical actually mean. So that way it can be different for different things. Fortunately for us, Unity already has horizontal and vertical down packed. So that way, if you can use the WASD on a keyboard, up, down, left, right on a keyboard, or you can use a joystick, and we don't have to change anything with that. But we are going to be changing some of that stuff later, which I will get into once we get to that point. But all these two things do is just get the input from the player, the X horizontal and Y vertical. Now what we need to do is actually get the character to move. So what we're going to do down here is we're going to do my rigid body dot move position. Then we're going to do the current position, which is transform dot position. We are going to add the input from the player, and we're going to normalize that. We are going to multiply that by player speed, and then multiply that by time dot fixed delta time. All right. So what that's going to do is anytime that there's movement detected, it's going to take the rigid body of the player object. It's going to take the current position, add the movement change. We'll get back to normalized here in a second. Then it's going to multiply it by the player speed, and then multiply it by time dot fixed delta time. So what fixed delta time is actual real time. Because computers are different across the board. Some have slower computers, some have faster computers. If you don't put time dot fixed delta time in here, you risk the chance of the player's character moving extremely slow on, older computers or computers that aren't as powerful, or you might risk the player moving super fast on computers that have newer graphics cards, newer CPUs and things like that. So always want to add that time dot fixed delta time in there. Now the normalized, what that's going to do, whenever you're playing a game, notice on here that you have the X and Y, the horizontal and vertical, but we don't do anything about the diagonals. So if you're trying to move up and to the right, like that direction with the mouse here, it's going to take both of these into consideration. So it's going to add both of them together, which is essentially going to double your speed anytime you're moving in a diagonal direction. So we normalize that, and it does all the math for us. So that way it does not add both of these together. So that way, no matter which of the 8 directions you're going to go the same speed. Now, the very last thing we need to do is an update. So again, for those of you that are very new to Unity and programming and scripting, start is the very start of the script. Anytime the script is called and starts, it's going to do whatever's in here, which is why we put the call to the rigid body here. Update happens every frame, once per frame. So anytime you want input or anytime you want something to happen throughout the entire game, you want it to happen in either update or fixed update, which we'll get into fixed update later. So we want to be able to move the character at any given point in time. Well, not really any given point in time. We'll get more into that later. But for the most part, we were going to want to be able to move the character anytime. So for now, we're just going to put handle movement and animation right there in update. So I've been doing this without explaining it to you, but you want to save your script constantly. That's what those little green indicators are. To save on a Windows computer, it is Control S. I do believe for a Mac, it's Command S. Or if you want to save the old-fashioned way, you can come up to File, click on that, and then click Save. But once you save all of this is all that we need to do right now. We are going to go back into Unity, and we're going to click on the player, and we're going to click on the script, and we are going to move it over to the player. Now, one mistake that I made is we added the player speed and we're multiplying the player speed, but we did not declare what that player speed was. So if we go back to Visual Studio, there's a few ways that we can do this. Way number one is we can just go up to here to our variables, hit equals, and then whatever speed we want, we're going to do 4, and then save it, and that's all we need to do. Way number two, and one that I'm going to use, is we add a bracket and then serialize field. So it already knew what I was going to do, so we're just going to hit tab to accept, and then we're going to hit Control S to save. So what serialize field does, give me 1 second. There we go. Had to sit right. What serialize field does. First, we need to describe what private and public does if you don't know already. So a private function or a private variable is something that can only be used within this script. So the player script, all of these private variables, they cannot be changed, altered, or added to or erased from any other scripts. And you'll see as the series progresses, we're going to have a ton of scripts. But whenever something is private, it cannot be changed. Even in Unity, it cannot be changed. But if we serialize the field, we at least get in Unity the ability to change that. So as we're testing things, if we want the player to be able to move faster or slower, we can come down here and physically type in, a different number to change that. That'll come very useful later on. One more thing that I do want to show you that will also become very helpful is tooltips. So if you hit the bracket and start typing in tool tip, and then in parentheses, you're going to put the speed of the player. And then you save that. And then you go back to Unity. Oh, what happened there? There's my Unity. If you hover over player speed, whatever tooltip you typed in, it'll put it right there. So as you can see, it says the speed of the player. We're going to do some other things to help organize stuff like that later, but for right now, I just wanted to show you that. With everything done, hopefully this will work now. So in order to test your game in Unity, you have a little play button up here. We're just going to click that. It's going to do a couple things real fast. And then this screen comes up. This is the game screen. So the camera here, so if I click over to scene and zoom out a little bit, the camera is this little square right here, and whatever's in that camera is what we're going to see on game. So from here, you can see we are moving around and everything is awesome. Obviously, we're not animating or anything yet. We're not having the camera follow the player yet, but this is a big step into getting to where we want to get to. So whenever you're done testing, there's that little stop button up top. You're going to click on that, and then it's going to stop testing. The last thing that I want you to do today is save this. So just like in the script, you can hit Control S to save it, or you can come up to File and hit Save. You'll notice that little asterisk in the sample scene is now gone. That's because it is saved. Anytime something is changed and it is not saved, you will see that little asterisk up here next to sample scene. But that is all that I have for you on this video. On the next video, we are going to animate the player character. So that way, anytime the player character moves, it will animate, and it will animate properly. With that being said, if you guys like this video, make sure to give it the big old thumbs up. It doesn't hurt to subscribe, and make sure you hit that little bell, because if you subscribe and hit that little bell, anytime I release a new video, you will get a notification, so that way you can keep up with these tutorials and any other tutorials that I release. Down in the description below, there is going to be a link to Discord. Please join the Discord community. From there, we can ask questions to each other. We can help each other out. We can get suggestions for new tutorials or new videos or new things that you would like to see. I am active on there all the time. And there's also the comment section. Feel free to ask questions in the comment section. I will try to get back to you as fast as I can. But from what I've seen from other people on other communities and other videos, people are usually pretty good with helping you out. So with that being said, this is where I'm going to end the video. As always, I hope you guys have a good day, and I'll see you on the next one.